So this is like just a random rant, but one thing that it always irritates me when certain people who are not mixed have discussions about like specifically Zendaya's career and just mixed people's ethnicities in general. One thing that irritates me is how much they center themselves in the discussion, but they also don't seem to take into the ethnic individuality of the mixed person. They just look at it as like a purely racial identity. They don't understand the nuances of like how what ethnicity and what country you come from does impact your mixed race identity or does impact how you engage with mixedness. So I saw this video that this dark-skinned black woman posted about Zendaya. Basically, it was the same old. Like, it was a good video. You know, she seems like a nice person. She wasn't hating on her. Like, you know, 90% of the video was good. I enjoyed the video. But one thing that I found interesting was that literally 3 minutes into the video, and we know people do this to get your attention and yoke you in and everything like that. Literally 3 minutes into the video, she's talking about Zendaya being mixed and, you know, her success and everything. And she's like, personally, I don't consider Zendaya black because I'm West African, and in Liberia, if they saw the two of us walking down the street, they would never call Zendaya black. And we actually call mixed people mulatto in our country, and it's literally so problematic. But I also found out that in South Africa, they call mixed people colored, and Tyla's colored. So in South Africa, she would be colored. This is what the African woman said in her video. Like, that's me quoting her verbatim. Number one, how many times are y'all gonna keep making the same video about Zendaya? Like, regardless, as far as I understand, Zendaya identifies primarily as biracial and then secondarily black. Everybody knows Zendaya is biracial. She identifies herself as biracial. I think it's interesting that you feel the need to make a point that you don't consider her black in contradiction to yourself, and then you're quoting what country you come from. Meanwhile, we're in the United States. We're in America. Zendaya is American. Why are you correlating her blackness or her identity and centering it to what you are in your country? Like, I don't like when they do that. Like, respectfully, we don't give a shit what y'all call us in your country. Like, we're American, we're in the United States. We consider ourselves to be black here. That's why somebody like Zendaya will say that she's black, even though she'll say that she's biracial too. It's really not confusing and complicated. It's confusing and complicated if you're a non-mixed person in mixed people's business, though. And then for her to bring up Tyla, that really irritated me, because you know when somebody doesn't have the range for a discussion, so they're literally just throwing random facts at the wall and seeing what sticks. That's what it was giving, because Liberia and South Africa are two completely different countries, miles away from each other, that don't even have similar cultures. So it's like, why are you bringing up what they call mixed people in a country miles and miles away when you're talking about an American biracial person from California and correlating her to being Liberian? Like, the conversation makes no sense. And what irritated me about that is that she's like, yeah, because I learned that in South Africa, Zendaya will be considered a colored. And it's like, no, she would not be considered a colored, because a colored is a very specific ethnicity. And this is what I need to explain to y'all. And this is what I'm trying to say. A lot of y'all don't respect the ethnicities of mixed people. Y'all look at being mixed as purely a racial thing when it's way more complicated than that. And this is what happens when you don't have the range for these conversations, but you're correlating it to an American racial discussion. But then you're talking about, oh, well, I don't consider her black because I'm Liberian. Meanwhile, as far as I'm concerned, in most parts of West Africa, people do not primarily identify with being black. They primarily identify with their ethnicity. So I think that is interesting when it comes to a mixed race person. Y'all can completely ignore ethnicity. And y'all will just clock them as whatever they are racially. Like, you're making it seem like Tyla and Zendaya are the same race when they're not at all. They're not even the same type of mixed person. Tyla's mixed with Asian. Zendaya's mixed with white. American European. I try to use the proper terms. They're not even mixed the same way. Mind you, Zendaya was raised by a non-black person and a black person. Tyla was raised by two multi-generationally mixed people. So their experiences are not the same at all. They're from two completely different countries. They're from two completely different ethnicities. And you're not from either of those countries, yet you're centering your Liberianness in the discussion and then bringing up other countries when they have nothing to do with each other. Like, okay, that's literally the same as her being like, oh, well, in Brazil, Zendaya would be considered a pardo. Okay, who cares? Who gives a fuck? What does that have to do with anything? Like, And I'm bringing this up not because I'm trying to go in on this girl or trying to like, be hypercritical of her. But I do think that it's an interesting discussion that the ethnicity of mixed people is often ignored and these conversations are had in a purely like racialized way. And that's kind of what irritates me. Oh, yeah. And another thing I think that is funny is that this is why me personally, like, I've come more into my being comfortable with identifying with being mixed in the last like 5 to 10 years, because I've explained this, in the United States, if you're MGM, most of the time they just consider you to be black. Even if you're like Afro-Latina, they just consider you to be black if that's how you show up phenotypically, especially if you're like second generation. So growing up, to be honest, I never thought much deeply about being mixed. Like I just knew, oh, this is where my culture is from. This is the culture I engage in. This is who I grew up around. It is what it is. Like I never thought deeply about being mixed. But as I got older, I did start to like think more about it. And I still primarily identify with being a black woman, but I understand that genetically I am mixed. So I consider myself and someone like Tyler, I consider us to be circumstantially mixed because we don't have two parents that chose a person that is of another race and they decided to make a mixed person. We're circumstantially mixed because we're essentially mixed because of history. So essentially people like me and Tyler were created mainly because of the transatlantic slave trade. A lot of people don't know that there was a slave trade in South Africa as well. And that is where the colors come from. And that there are colors that are mixed with Asian. There's also colors that are mixed with Dutch. There's also colors that are multiracial. But yeah, anyway, so yeah, I consider people like us to be circumstantially mixed, as where I would consider Zendaya to be someone not circumstantially mixed. I don't know. I guess intentionally mixed. Yeah, we'll say that. I consider biracial people to be people who are intentionally mixed. I consider MGM people to be people who are circumstantially mixed because of history and the regions that we're from, right? So that makes a difference, right? And that's also why growing up, people more so, especially in New York City, we identify with our culture. So when people ask me what I am, I tell them, my dad's Cuban and Bahamian. My mom's African American. So I never had to explain further about my race or anything. It's never more of a discussion from that in New York City because there's so many multi-ethnic Caribbeans. There's so many people who are half Jamaican, half Cuban, half African American, half Dominican. There's so many people like that look like me also that are in the African diaspora that it's not even a conversation. So that was why I never really thought much about being mixed. And I'm sure it's the same for Tyler. In the sense that in her country, being color is normal. So we're not sitting around opining and having these deep ass conversations about our mixed race identity because it's just like it's just the world that we were born into. It's weird. You don't think much about it. And generally, like Afro-Latinos and multi-generationally mixed cultures do not really teach your kids how to identify. I'm gonna just be honest with you just kind of go out in the world and you figure it out for yourself. That's like you talk to a lot of Latino families or even I'm sure colored families. And I kind of had that experience too when I was in South Africa, when I was talking to different colored people. A lot of people will have completely different perspectives on race or how they identify. And that's because most of the time we're not taught to identify one singular way. Anyway, I'm kind of going on the MGM tangent. But my point is that, what I was going to say about these people that, when it comes to these people that are not mixed, that have these mixed race discussions, what I find very interesting is that they'll make a point to say things about biracial women like Zendaya and be like, well, I don't consider her black. And why I don't like that take that they have is not because I think that biracial should be blackified and should singularly identify with blackness and that we should just ignore their mixed race identity or their other parent. That's not what I'm saying at all. But when people are saying that to y'all, I'm speaking to my biracial girlies right now. They're not saying that in good faith. They're saying that low-key to try to check you and try to assert who's boss. That's exactly what that is, because they know mixed race women cannot run around telling fully black women what they are. So when they make these little takes, they're like, well, I know that you identify as black, but I don't consider you black because in my country that's thousands of miles away, we don't consider you black. Okay, nobody gives a shit. We're not in Liberia. Like, you know what I mean? There's a social and contextual reason why Zendaya identifies as biracial and black. And actually it makes sense because if you look at Zendaya, to me, she gives biracial. She looks like a half white, half black person. But at the same time, you can tell she's obviously has African ancestry. You know what I mean? She's not a racially ambiguous person to the extent where she can play different roles in Hollywood and nobody will clock her as being a person of African descent. To me, Zendaya looks exactly what she is. So I think it's actually correct for her to identify as biracial and black, because it makes sense. Just like it makes sense for someone like Keanu Reeves to identify as biracial and Asian. To me, Keanu Reeves looks Asian to me. He looks like something. He don't look like a straight up just white guy. He looks like some type of Asian, but I don't know. Maybe that's just me. So to me, it makes perfect sense when biracial people identify as biracial and they identify with the dominant non-white ethnic group that they're mixed with. It just makes sense, but I guess maybe it only makes sense to me because I'm a mixed person too. I don't know. Because there are also other mixed people who are biracial who say that they shouldn't do that and that they feel like it's problematic. So I don't know. I feel like there's multiple different understandings of the conversation, but I try to have that perspective to be empathetic to other mixed people, because I don't think that it's fair to force people to only identify in one way or with one thing, because that's like, it's just not even socially accurate. You know what I mean? I guess I'll speak on my perspective too. I've been clocked as both things. Like, this happens consistently. Both people will see me as mixed. People will see me as only Latina, or they'll primarily see me as black. You know what I mean? Like, I get kind of both. So I understand why a mixed person would say, well, I'm biracial and I'm black. You know what I mean? Like, it makes sense just based on the society, especially the way United States operates. So that's why I also get irritated when people are like, oh, well, I'm from Chechnya. Oh, I'm from Japan. Oh, I'm from Liberia. Oh, I'm from this country. So we don't consider you black. We don't consider you this. Okay, nobody gives a fuck. We don't care what y'all considering us in other countries. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care about that. I'm in the United States. But yeah, if you're a mixed person, particularly a biracial woman, and you make it clear you're biracial, but you also identify with black womanhood, or you make it clear that you're in the African diaspora too, you will have certain types of black women who will say things like that, like, oh, well, I just don't consider you black. And the thing about it is that they're trying to check you and sun you, and they're trying to assert who's boss. And they're also trying to reinforce the idea that they control your acceptance, and they control your self-perception, and they control your access to the community. That is what that is. Because people who genuinely don't give a fuck how mixed people identify, and they just accept whoever is part of their culture and it is what it is, they're not making a point to say, well, I don't consider you this. Oh, well, I don't see you as that. People who respect other people's identity genuinely don't do that. Like, I don't do that to other mixed people. Like, I try my best not to. I don't do that to other monoracial people either. Like, I wouldn't do that. You know what I mean? I'm not going to say to an African immigrant, oh, well, I don't really consider you African American because both of your parents immigrated over here from Ghana. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to say that, because if they identify with being African American and that's their experience, who the fuck am I to tell them that that's not what you are, because I want to center my ethnicity in the conversation? You know what I mean? It can go either way. But anyways, yeah, so where was I going with that? Oh yeah, what I find funny about these people that'll say like, oh, biracial isn't black, mixed people aren't black, XYZ, they also get offended by terms like mulatto, or a lot of the exact same people who have an issue with biracial people, they were the same people complaining about coloreds and complaining about Tyla, saying that she's not black, she's colored. So what it really is, I'm sorry, I don't really think these people really have a real issue. I think that they're going to have an issue with and be offended by anything mixed people call themselves or mixed people say, because they're centering themselves in the discussion when it has really nothing to do with them. You shouldn't be offended that in your country they call mixed people mulatto, because it has nothing to do with you. I don't understand why people in this country get offended by the term mulatto when it has nothing to do with them. Like, again, I come from a multi-generational family on both sides. So even my African American side and my Cuban side both has mentioned the terms mulatto to me before, so that's not a mystery term to me. I just don't understand why it's like, oh my God, that's so offensive. This is my thing about it, is that it's not. So in Cuba in particular, there's a lot of cultural lore, you could say, around the term mulatta specifically, and that kind of gets into like the cultural relevance of this conversation as well. But me personally, as someone who was raised in the United States and has family that's African American that was categorized as mulatto, I personally think it's an antiquated term, and in the English speaking context, it just comes off as, yeah, old fashioned. And then even in amongst like Cubans, like in the United States, or like Dominicans, like they are not running around the United States calling themselves that. Like, even though in our country, like that is a racial term, it's on the census and everything, like it's an official term. But yeah, it's very culturally relevant to what you're talking about, to the region you're talking about, or the country. But at the same time, I do think that it's funny that a lot of monoracial people take offense to it. And I'm like, it has nothing to really do with you. And it's just like, it's more antiquated than offensive. So I don't really know where that came from. To be honest, I do think it's funny that all these monoracial people will get offended by it. I will say that it's offensive. So it's like, you don't think Zendaya is a black person and you don't consider her black based on your standards. But yet she can't be mulatto either. She can't be mixed race either. Like... And that's why I've kind of come to the conclusion that, yeah, they're going to have an issue with whatever makes people say and however you identify, because they're inserting themselves in the discussion and they censor themselves in it. And they think that anything you say that's not completely going along with everything that they believe or how they identify, they think it's a personal slight towards them, or that you're trying to get some type of special status and be different. And this is what's interesting, is that I think some people misunderstood one of the shorts that I put up when I was talking about what motivates people's mixed pride. And y'all need to understand, Zendaya being proud to be a biracial person and, you know, saying I want to only take biracial roles, or I only want to take white roles, we can see the energy and the spirit of somebody like Zendaya and see that Zendaya is moving out of self-love and respect for both of her cultures and her whole identity. To me, this is a very water is wet conversation. You know that the two are not inherently interchangeable. And I don't need to explain that any further, because I feel like there's a lot of people who are going to be intentionally dense about that. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Because, and I've said this in my video, when it comes to dark-skinned people, people can talk all day about their self-hate, internalized anti-blackness, XYZ. But suddenly when it comes to mixed and light-skinned people, now that's not existent and they ain't never seen that before. Like, that's what I'm saying. People are being intentionally dense. And I know, because Latinos do the same thing. Non-black Latinos do the exact same thing. When you try to talk about isms, anti-blackness, anti-indigenism, whatever it is, they pull the same tactics. So me personally, I'm not interested in dealing with the same stuff that I did not like dealing with as a child. I'm not interested in creating my own space and having to deal with that. That's essentially what I was saying. So as somebody who comes from a culture that encourages that type of thinking already, I'm trying to tell you what the outcome is and what the experience of living in that is. And I'm saying that is not positive, but go off. Do you go learn the hard way? You know, whatever. That was just whatever. If the last 5 years has taught me anything, is that people of African descent will hold on to any ideology regardless of how little it benefits them. As long as they feel like it's associated with having more association with power than other people of African descent, then they'll hold on to it with their life until something better comes along. That's all I'm going to say, because people done already tried this and it's a failed ideology, but go off. And it has nothing to do with mixedness or pride or anything like that. It's the mentality behind the ideology and XYZ, which is a lot of these people's energy. You can tell a mixed person who's moving out of self-hatred, anti-blackness, and self-loathing versus a mixed person who's moving out of trying to be equitable, moving out of trying to practice self-love and acknowledge both their heritages. It's really not a confusing topic. People of African descent act like it's a confusing topic because a lot of people of African descent, whether they be mixed race, monoracial or not, African American, continental African, Caribbean, wherever the hell black people come from, they struggle with self-love. They struggle with loving their ethnicity. They struggle with loving their blackness. So when a mixed person like Zendaya doesn't seem to have those problems, you know, people, number one, are going to ignore that. But then number two, we can't keep acting like the only type of mentality of mixed person running around here is Zendaya. Like, we have to be honest with you. A lot of people of African descent, regardless of their ethnic background or racial background, you know, whatever, a lot of people do have internalized anti-blackness. It just is what it is. Like, so I forgot what the point I was going with that. It was, I was saying what motivates people's mixed pride. I don't really think that it's confusing to be able to see that what's motivating somebody like Tyler and Zendaya is that they're just living their lives versus a mixed person who has internalized anti-blackness and wants to identify with certain terms because they're trying to engage in racial escapism. Okay, like, it's very obvious. But anyway, I'm not even going to get deep into that. But yeah, I went on like a whole tangent. Like, this video is way longer than I want it to be. Mind you, this was supposed to be a short. This was literally supposed to be a 3-minute short. But anyway, so yeah, they'll say that biracial people can be black, but then they also take personal offense to any mixed race term biracial people try to use. Like, they just started letting biracial people call themselves biracial comfortably. And isn't it funny that they only started to accept the term biracial when they decided to take this hostile approach towards biracial people and decided to feel like they need to defend themselves against them and gatekeep blackness? It's very interesting. That's why a lot of these conversations come off as performative to me and self-serving. I don't think that this girl is a mixed race hater or a lightist or anything like that. Like I said, I enjoyed the video. It was a good analysis on Zendaya. I think that the arguments she made were on good faith, but I do think that that's interesting. But yeah, just to wrap this video up, I want to go back to talking about the ethnic context when we're talking about mixed people. So one thing that she said in the video was that she finds the term mulatto offensive, but at the same time, she was like, well, I found out that in South Africa, Zendaya would be considered colored. No, she would not be colored. She wouldn't be colored because colored is a specific ethnicity with cultural practices, with history, with specific neighborhoods they live in. A biracial person who's American cannot pop up and move to South Africa and just become a color. That's not how that works. And I heard a lot of people pushing that misinformation when the whole Tyler discussion was going on. And y'all are doing that because y'all don't respect the ethnic identity of mixed race people. Zendaya is an American first generation biracial woman from California. I think Oakland at that. Maybe I'm making that up, but I'm pretty sure she's from Oakland. Born in the mid-90s. There's a very specific cultural and ethnic context she was raised up in it. Hence why in the United States, we call people like Zendaya biracial. We don't use the term biracial in Latin America. Y'all don't use the term biracial in West Africa, as far as I'm concerned. They don't even use the term biracial in the UK. They use the term mixed race. It just sounds incomplete to me. I understand the point, but I'm just like, mixed, what does that mean? Like mixed race with what? Like, what is that? You know what I mean? Maybe that's the American in me. Maybe that's why I like the term biracial more. But biracial to me makes more sense. Mixed race can be anything. And it just sounds incomplete. Biracial makes sense. Bi means of two groups, of two races of parents, makes sense. So I just find it interesting that as a Liberian woman, you can come to the United States and feel as though that because you're racially black, now you have just as much cultural pull as African Americans. So you can call bats and stripes as to who's black and who's not. And you can sit around and tell Zendaya, who's an actual American with two American parents, who have been ethnically American for the last few generations, as far as I know, you're West African coming over here telling an American biracial person you don't consider them black. Meanwhile, you're not even the same type of black as what she descends from. So I find that very interesting. And it's like they think that because they're monoracial that they not automatically can dictate. But I think that perspective is very interesting because it's the same thing. Zendaya cannot go to South Africa and be like, hey, y'all, I'm colored. No, you're not. You don't speak the language. You don't have the cultural practices. You did not grow up in that community. You don't have a parent that's colored. Zendaya cannot go to South Africa and say that she's colored. There's a very specific cultural and ethnic context to being South African colored. And that was something about the conversation that I did not like when it came to Tyler, because colored is not just a general term for mixed race South Africans. Colored is an actual ethnic group with a history and practices. You know what I mean? Just like Trevor Noah is not a South African colored. Trevor Noah is biracial, but he's South African, but he's not South African colored. He doesn't even, if you listen to South African colors, he don't even sound like them. He didn't grow up in that culture, and that's not a bad thing, but you can't just say, oh, well, because y'all are all mixed, y'all are all the same. It's offensive. It's basically just like saying, well, in DR, Zendaya will be Dominican. Okay, that's a very specific ethnicity. That's a very specific culture that you have to be born into, and you have to have cultural genetic ties to that group of people. You can't just pop up being a half African, half European person, just like the people on that island, and think, oh, okay, I'm Dominican now because I'm mixed and I'm living in Santo Domingo. That's not how it works. And it's like, I don't understand why when it comes to mixed people don't understand that, or they don't take that into account. But when it comes to African people or monoracial people can understand that. A dark-skinned African-American from Mississippi cannot go to Liberia and say that she's the same ethnicity as this woman. She can't go, a dark-skinned chick from Georgia cannot go to Nigeria and say, oh, I'm Igbo now because we look the same. But why is it that when it comes to mixed people, y'all think that mixed people can just be interchangeable just because we're all like mixed with African? Like it's weird to me. And that's because there's a level of not respecting mixed people's identity, autonomy, or the cultural context they come from. Tyla came to the United States and was saying she's South African because that's her ethnicity. She was not saying racially, I'm not the same as you. Racially, I don't want to identify with you. I don't want to identify with being a person of African descent. That's not what she was saying. She was saying I'm colored the same way a Brazilian is going to come over here and say, oh, I'm Brazilian. A person from Ukraine is going to come over here and say, I'm Ukrainian. I'm Japanese. Why is that an issue? It's an issue because y'all get triggered when people of African descent assert their cultural and racial autonomy. Just like certain people get triggered when American biracial people say, yeah, I'm biracial, but I'm black also because I'm from the United States. I'm an American person. My white and my a black parents are both American. I'm biracial, but I see myself as a black person because of XYZ reason. Or maybe I don't because of XYZ reason. People don't respect that because y'all don't respect the cultural and racial and ethnic autonomy of mixed people. Just like y'all forced and demonized Tyla, forced Tyla to not identify with color and demonized her for that. Meanwhile, all she was saying was that was her ethnicity. It's funny because being in South Africa, I saw more, and I follow some South African pages too. Even with 𝘾𝙤𝙬𝙧, they will say that they're African. They will say that they're people of African descent. They will be connected with the Khoi or the Zulu tribe that most of them are mixed with Khoisan, but they will be connected with the African tribes that they're mixed with. Like South African colors don't deny that they're people of African descent. 𝘾𝙤𝙬𝙧s don't deny that they're people of African descent. Like, to be honest, that's mostly things that people in the Americas, so I'm talking about North America, South America, and the Caribbean, this whole denialism when it comes to Africa, that's mainly an issue that people from the Americas have. And that's because of the legacy of slavery in this country. And that's because in this region, and because in this region, being connected to Africa or being a person of African descent was always connected to the transatlantic slave trade. And a lot of people have self-hatred about that. And that's why you have a lot of people who try to pretend to be Native American because they have shame surrounding the fact that we're people of African descent and we were brought over here as enslaved people. See, these people never were able to find pride in who they are, and they were always self-loathing and always looked up to Native Americans and white Americans, and they had, again, racial escapism complexes, so they like to pretend that they're Native American and try to deny their African ancestry. That's not because that's something inherent to mixed people, or that's something inherent to African Americans, or something inherent to Afro-Latinos, because that's what y'all try to do. No, the reason why a lot of us are like that is because of the history of slavery in this country and the legacy of people of African descent being considered lower on the totem pole. To me, I don't think that acknowledging the reality gives you an excuse to hate yourself a lot, or to be shamed or feel shame around being of African descent. It doesn't make me feel some type of way because historically people of African descent were at the lower realms of society. But a lot of people have self-hate about that because y'all are just insecure as shit. Like, it is what it is. I don't need to pretend that racial society isn't what it is because my self-esteem is built on how other people view me. That's why y'all make up these stories about being half Native American, or I don't subscribe to XYZ racial hierarchy. Okay, well, the hierarchy is what it is. And if it wasn't, you wouldn't be sitting up here trying to align yourself with all these different ethnicities and being gassed up because you think people think that you're Puerto Rican. Like, if y'all didn't buy into racial hierarchies, y'all wouldn't have so much shame surrounding being people of African descent, and y'all wouldn't be so hyped when you think that other people think that you're other ethnicities of people. Have y'all noticed that? But anyway, I'm not going to get into that, but I think that it's very funny that people will try to make it seem like, oh, like biracial people and light-skinned people who come from light-skinned families, oh, they're so self-hating, they have so many complexes about being African and being black. Meanwhile, all you see on social media is brown-skinned and dark-skinned people pretending to be Native American, but they sit up here talking about South African colors, talking about Tyla want to distance herself from blackness and Tyla thinks she better. But aren't you sitting around on social media running around claiming that you're Native American? Because I'm looking at these color posts and they know they mix with Khoisan. They know they part African. They call themselves African. South African colors call themselves African. They don't deny being African. So I do think that is a difference between mixedness in the Americas versus mixedness in other countries. There's a huge complex and denialism about and surrounding Africa in this region of the world because of the history that that people of African descent have in this region. And I feel like that's where a lot of the performative pride comes from, and that's where a lot of the weirdo mentalities in certain mixed people come from. So when I made my short, when I was saying what really motivates people mixed pride, I wasn't trying to say that, oh, if you consider yourself mixed race or biracial, then that means that you're trying to deny your African ancestry. That's not what I'm saying. But to sit up here and pretend like there's not a large and vocal minority of people in the Americas that engage in racial denialism and racial escapism because they have shame surrounding being a person of African descent, and that does impact certain mixed people. I don't understand why that's a controversial take, or how that's an incorrect take, because we see it all over everywhere. If there are a bunch of brown skin and dark skin people playing indigenous escapism games, why is it hard to believe that these same people have babies with white people, and then their mixed race kids have complexes about their blackness as well? If you have a bunch of monoracial black people who have issues with their blackness, why is it surprising that they're producing mixed people that have issues with their blackness? It's really not a complicated conversation. But anyway, I kind of went on just a general tangent in this video. This turned out to be way longer than I wanted to be. Like I said, this was supposed to be a 3-minute short. But I did want to upload some long form content this weekend, so kind of worked out. But anyway, get in the comment section and let me know what y'all thought about my perspective in regards to the ethnic autonomy of mixed race people. What do you think about my takes on Zendaya and Tyla? And what do you think about my perspective on certain monoracial people giving their perspectives on mixed race identity? Thanks for all your support. Peace.